Right, welcome along, Joe. Welcome back to Edinburgh. It's sitting here with Joe Jordan, ex-Scotland international, Scotland hero, shall we say. Joe, welcome back to Edinburgh. What does it feel like to be back? You must have fond memories during your time
It's
here.
always nice to come back to Edinburgh. It's a city that I'm from the west, but it's a city that I have good memories. My family grew up here for 3 years, went to school here, and obviously I managed here with the Hearts, and I enjoyed that. It was a great experience for me. And since then, I've come back on, I would say, a regular basis to Edinburgh. It's a place where with good restaurants, people allow you to have a little bit of privacy as well. And when there is an opportunity, I come here.
You talk about going to school here. Is that kind of where you found your love for football here in terms of going to school? Did you play a lot of football at school when you were younger in Edinburgh? Or was it more when you were going back through West?
No, I was brought up in Lanarkshire, and like everywhere else in Scotland, you know, Lanarkshire, whatever the county was, Scotland, and then, and I would say now, they were mad about football, you know. I used to, when there was an opportunity, I would play, and I did. I ended up playing for the school team and things like that. And you know, like every boy's dream at that age, you want to be a football player. I did anyway, and there were thousands in that era and now who want to play football. And I was fortunate enough to get the breaks. I ended up at Green at Morton, and I worked in Glasgow for about 2 years, and I was semi-pro, as you would call it then. I had a job 5 to 5 o'clock at night, and then I would go and train at Bellahouston Park 3 times a week with Green at Morton. And from there, you know, I fought in the reserve team to try and progress and get into the first team. But although things went reasonably well for me, the opportunity came when I was 18, and I had to make a decision whether to continue working in Glasgow. I was trying to put time in there to become a draftsman, and I decided from the time and what I thought that I had a chance of being a full-time football player. So Morton gave me the chance to go full-time, and I made that was a big decision. So I left work in Glasgow and went to Morton full-time, had a pre-season with them. I think I ended up playing in total about 6 games, and I think it was round about September, October of that, my first season. I was 18. Leeds United came in for them, and I was away. It was as quickly as that, and a lot of that had come down to there was a guy in the, not a guy, a real, I hope you would say, hero, Bobby Collins. Bobby had been a Celtic player, an Everton player, and a real Scotland player, and played in the World Cup with the Mackays and that in '58. And Bobby was an influential guy in the dressing room, and he still had contacts down in England, and I think his family were living down there. So when he went down and he did the odd training session down there, Don Revie asked him, "Is there any boys up there you would recommend, Bobby? How's it going?" And he mentioned my name, and from that they came in and watched me. There was the Scottish Anglo thing here, and I played it at West Brom and down there in this competition. And Leeds came and watched me. Don Revie and his assistant came and watched me, and next thing I knew, they put an offer in and I was gone.
So the gamble pays off then, in terms of giving up the job and taking the full-time football at Morton.
I think so.
Because I imagine there wasn't loads of money flying about back those days. But to play for a manager like Don Revie, what was he like? He was a bit of character as well. So when you get to Leeds, what was it like to play a manager of that stature that was obviously had a bit of reputation himself?
Well, it wasn't just Don Revie. Don Revie, I would say, when I look back in my career after all the years, he was the best manager that I ever worked under.
Yeah.
And that I think one of the reasons that was because I went there. I was 18. I was raw. I was a part-timer. But they looked after me. The dressing room was strong, the 2 dressing rooms. And there was a connection with so many Scottish players, you know. Don Revie, when I went, my peg in the dressing room was between 2 Scots, and they were supposed to look after me. And he could have put me in another dressing room where it was Billy Bremner and others, but he put me between Eddie Gray and Peter Lorimer. And they were in their mid-20s. So they were supposed to look after me, which they did. But the dressing room was full of international players. And what was there other than players with the names that I've mentioned and the quality of the footballer? They were good pros. They were good pros, and they were winners. And that was an education to me. So although Don Revie, as I said, was an incredible manager, he controlled the dressing room. But he allowed the players to have a little bit of influence on it, and players that had their own views of the game. There was that, but it was a real strong dressing room in character, on and off the field.
You talk about the split in those dressing rooms, just about the context to that. So was it 2 separate dressing rooms the players were split across, or was it 2 separate teams in that?
Well, it was a home. We trained at Ellen Road, so you used the dressing rooms. You used the home and away. The dressing room I was in was away, but you had in the other dressing room you had Johnny Giles and Big Jack Charlton and people like that. It was just a mixture. It wasn't. It was all the first team players, all the pros. The apprentices, there was a stadium at Ellen Road, there was a car park, and then there was the pitches. The pitches were 50 yards away. So everything was there. You went to Ellen Road every single day. So that's the way it was. That was the setup, you know, a little bit different now where you'll find clubs, Scotland and England, they've got their academy at one point, and then they've got the setup for the training facilities for the pros, maybe somewhere else altogether. It's changed in such a way you wouldn't believe what it was then. But regarding the facilities that down at Ellen Road, they were good by the standards of the time.
And you had 233 appearances for Leeds. You obviously got the First Division Championship in there. European Cup, Winners' Cup. What was the European adventure like for you, and what playing alongside players like Billy Bremner and so forth?
Well, I went in the year 70, 71, and I was fortunate enough to I think I came on and there was a Fairs Cup. This is my introduction to football, not just playing in the league, but going and playing, hopefully, on the bench and coming on. And I did it playing against Liverpool. We played against Liverpool in the semi-finals of the Fairs Cup and we won it. And we went to play Turin, Juventus in Turin. It was a home and away, and that was my first journey. That was my first journey on a plane. That was me. So we went to Turin and we played Juventus, and the game got abandoned on the Wednesday night. It got abandoned because of the weather conditions. It was 0-0 at the time, and so we had to stay over till the Friday. We continued. We started the game again, and we drew 2-2. And then so we come back to Ellen Road. I didn't play. And then we come back and we I think it was 0-0, and we won in away goals. So that was my introduction. I'd been at the club maybe 6 months, and that was my introduction to it. We won the Fairs Cup, and there's always ups and downs in football, but that introduction, playing against players. There's a boy called Anastasi who was the biggest transfer in history there. He was playing. I think there was other players there that because Juventus at that time, they were the club. They were but Leeds won it, and we went on, and I became a player that was in the squad, and playing in Europe was a must. Leeds United had to play it, and we did. We went on and played in different tournaments. I was fortunate enough to play again what became the UEFA Cup. I played in the European Cup Winners' Cup final, and I played in the European Cup final. So I learned my football there. That was my ground, and not taking anything away from my time at Greenock Morton, but going there, I learned what it was all about to be a football player.
What were the stadiums like to play in back then? There was a lot of regulation and stuff like now in terms of seat stadiums and how everything's segregated. But obviously, I can imagine at that time playing for Leeds, it was pretty big stadiums in terms of the crowds and the turnouts. It wasn't as segregated.
It's as many. The stadium was as many as they could push in. It didn't matter what it was. The stadiums. I think they've been upgraded since I think, but at that time, it was a game where I would say at that time, although there was a great, what would you say? I would say that maybe about six clubs at the time who were competing to win the league. It wasn't just two. But out of those six, the ones that were there or made it there to win a trophy, it was Leeds or Liverpool. They were the two teams. But the other teams that won the championship round about then were Everton, Arsenal, Derby County. So there was a lot of competition there, But the stadiums, especially when Leeds were concerned, when Leeds went to play, they were popular and unpopular in a way. Because they wanted, the people would go to work because they wanted to beat Leeds. It was always, there was never really like there is up here with the Hearts and the Hibs or the Celtic and Rangers. Leeds didn't really have an old firm game, a derby game. All the games that you played, whether it was going up to Newcastle or going down to Southampton, the stadiums were full.
Moving forward to sort of current day, I think you're looking at Leeds and Man United, Liverpool, Man City. There's a big rivalry in amongst all. I know you then make your move to Man United. You mentioned Liverpool there. Was there as big a rivalry between Leeds and Manchester United at that point? And was there any sort of like, you will see the press today, but was there ever sort of like, oh, you're moving to Man United in terms of leaving Leeds? Was there any sort of comments made in making that move for Leeds?
I don't think I went doing too well at Leeds when I left. It was a big decision for myself to leave Leeds United. I'd been at Leeds United for about seven years, but I thought the time was right. I was in my mid-20s, and I got the opportunity to go to Manchester United, and I went. And I think that the Leeds fans weren't too happy, especially when Gordon McQueen came about 10 days after me, a couple of weeks after me, and I think the story went that I persuaded him to come, and there was nothing like that. In fact, Gordon, prior to that, I think he was more or less tapped by Manchester United when Tommy Docherty was the manager, and he had left and Dave Sexton had come in. So Gordon, although it never came up, he had been touched on by Manchester United. But I think it was the timing of it. I went and then Gordon came. Me and Gordon, we were in digs together at Leeds and one thing and another. So I get the blame. That was basically it, It's nothing to do with me. Gordon was a strong-willed guy, and he made his own decision, and he came over the Pennines and joined me.
I read a story about Gordon McQueen had actually played a part in a transfer move for you. Now, I can't remember whether it was rumour of you going to Germany or when you were at Milan, or you thought you were getting a wind-up and he went out and met the manager, and the next again day you're like, oh, but hold on a minute, this move's serious. Well, tell me more about that.
Yeah, that's true. It's a true story. What happened is that we came to the end of the season, and I can't really. I think it may have been after the. I think it was after the European Cup final. We had played Bayern Munich, and Bayern Munich won the game in Paris. So after it, we had Jimmy Anfield, the manager at that time. He took us away for about 4 or 5 days, and we went to Spain, and just to relax and get over it. So the players were there, and I had some what would good reviews of the lead up to the European Cup. We played Barcelona and one thing and then playing against Bayern Munich, and there was a little bit in the paper by the manager talking about me. This is the Bayern Munich manager. Anyway, we went to the little breakaway holiday and that, and we just all sat around the pool, and the waiter came over and he says, "Is Mr. Jordan here?" And I says, "Yeah, it's me." He says, "Oh, there's someone want to speak to you here." He says he's the manager of Bayern Munich. And I thought, and we're all round the pool and all these players are there. And I says, all right, okay. And I thought straight away, 100% set up, you know. So I says to Gordon, listen, I'm looking around, there's 1 or 2 players not there. And I said, you go and talk to him. It's one of the players, Bremner or Giles or something like that. They're going to wind me up. You go and go. So Gordon went to the bar and took the phone up, and he says, yeah, hello. So the guy's talking to him away, and he's responded to the questions, and the boy's asking, listen, we're going to make contact with Leeds United, we're going to make an offer, but I want to know, first of all, would you be interested in coming to Bayern Munich? Gordon says, yeah. And so he's putting my thoughts across. I'll think about it. He says, well, we will do it, but would you come? He says, yeah, I'll come, but there's one condition here. You know, I'm leaving Great Britain and I'm coming to a country. I'd like my pal to come. He's a centre half, a good player, McQueen. You got to. Can you not buy McQueen as well? And the boy, the manager's saying, we've got Bayern, we've got Beckenbauer, we've got Schwarzenbeck, and they played. It was the '75, this is '74. They played in the World Cup, won the World Cup. He says we're okay there. We've got strength. There's still a few years in them. He says, well, you got to think it over, yeah, because you know that would swing it. You know, if McQueen came, I'd definitely come. So I come back, and Gordon come back to the group, and he says, sorted him out, you know. But he had a wee bit of an accent. I don't know who's doing it, but they did come across as if they had a German accent. So I went on, and then I was a bit, I don't know what's going on here. But the following morning, the phone rang about 5 in the morning, and I think the boy's name was Detmar Kramer. And he says, this is Mr. Kramer here. Have you any more thoughts about our discussion? Would you come? Because the club's going to make an offer.
So you took this phone call?
I took the phone call in the room. And then it clocked it. No, this isn't a wind up.
Is Gordon in the room at this point?
He would have, yeah, I remember him. And I says, yeah, I'll be, without a shadow of a doubt, yeah, I'll come, no problem. And we got back shortly after that, and they put an offer in, and they turned it down. So I wasn't too happy. I wanted to go, you know.
Gordon must have been gutted he never got the move as well.
Yeah, well, but I lived through that, but that's the way it went.
But you do eventually then get your move to Europe post the Man United area move, in terms of moving out to Milan. How does that come about, and just how excited were you at that time to go to a club of that stature?
Well, I had been really disappointed that it never came off going to Bayern Munich. They went on to win the European Cup. They were still a top team, you know, Gerd Müller and people like that, and they won 3 in a row. So that it was something that it went, and then a few years later I went to from, as you say, from Manchester United to AC Milan, and that was one that I thought, well, I'm not letting this slip by again. My contract was up at Manchester United, but in those days they had your registration, and it didn't make any difference, like it does now. If you're out of contract now, you can move to any club, but no. So they contacted Leeds, and I think the way it went then was it was regarding the valuation of the player was decided on your age, where your wage that you were on at the time, were you an international player? So there was that, so eventually they could get a figure. That was it, set. The club, if the club put in that offer, then the opposing ones, the ones that was your club, they had to take it. So I had that opportunity to go to AC Milan, and I wanted to go, and I took it, and it was an eye opener to me to go there. I was very fortunate at the time. The Italian Federation had, or the FA, their FA had stopped players coming from outside Italy. There had been a period of time when the likes of Jimmy Greaves went, and John Charles, but they'd closed it, and this was them opening it again. They'd been opened 1 year before my transfer took place, but each club was allowed 1 player. So I was a fortunate one to for things to be right, you know, the timing right and one thing, and I wanted to go and they wanted me. So I went to AC Milan. That would be in '81.
Did that take much convincing to get that deal over the line? I read a story actually, is it was the owner or the manager. You had your family out when you were doing the signing, so they were all getting gifts bought for them in order to try and convince you to do it. And I believe your daughter was involved in that as well, in terms of taking a famous high street in Italy to try and get some stuff. Or was your mind already made up? That was just a bonus for them?
No, my mind was made up. You know, what the Italians do. I mean, they got a little bit of class about them, you know. And no, I went over there with my solicitor. I didn't have an agent. I had a solicitor. The guy was so helpful, you know, in many ways. And me and him, Ronnie Tiemann was his name, and we went. And we did what we intended to do, which was to sign the contract, do the press, and I went on, just me and Ronnie. That was it, just me and him. We went there, but after everything was sorted out, the owner, chairman of the club, took us in the car, and he took us to a street called Via Monte Napoleone, and that is where all the big shops are, you know. And he stopped in the street, and we went into different shops. I had 3 kids at the time. They all got a present. My wife got a present. I went up the shop 50 yards, up the street 50 yards, stopped. My mother got a present, my dad got a present, and then Mr. Tiemann got a present.
This is a pretty expensive transfer for them at the time.
Yeah, and Ronnie, they got Ronnie a watch, you know, Ronnie Tiemann. So everybody got a present, except me. I never got a present. I got the contract. I'm quite happy with the contract. But everybody got a present, and then I took all these presents home, and that's the way they were. It was, as I say, it was a different chapter in my career, and it is one that I would have regretted if I hadn't. It was, I would say, in many ways, it's the best move that I had in my career, because I learned so much on and off the field. It was difficult. It was a tough time, but it was so rewarding, and what I learned.
And did you retain your lingo? Did you continue your Italian as you move away from Milan? Is that something that you can still fluently?
I have persevered. It's very difficult to keep up if you don't speak it, But no, I did persevere, and my daughter lives out there. She's married, and she's out there. She lives in Milan, and I've got two granddaughters there. So I do keep it up. I go there. The two dressing rooms at Milan and Verona. I ended up going to Verona. I still keep in contact with some of the players from both dressing rooms. I go to Verona, which is again another beautiful city. So my ties are still there. So no, I keep it up.
You get the presents when you go over and visit now.
No, I'm the one that pays the bill at the end of the meal. When you go with the family, that's it. You're still granddad or dad. So
you sit here and talk about your career all day, and obviously when you go, you mentioned Verona, Southampton, Bristol, but management. When did you make the decision to sort of go in and be? I know you're around sort of Harry Redknapp, you had your own sort of career in terms of management, but was it something you knew as a player that was where you wanted to go, or was it just naturally fall into it?
Well, fate, suppose, come. But when I look at from the start, I wanted to be a football player when I was at school and that. And although there's ups and downs in any sport, I think if you're doing something that you enjoy, you love it, and things like that, and it gives you the opportunity to see the world, which I had in football. It was something when it was coming to the end of my playing career that, yeah, I would have liked, if I had a choice, to continue not to play because it's going to come to an end, but to be involved in football. And that happened. I was a player at Bristol City. The club decided to, Terry Cooper, he was an ex-teammate of mine at Leeds, and Terry took me there from Southampton, and I'd been there a couple of years. Terry was leaving, and Terry recommended me for the job, and I got the job. It was only for 3 months, so fortunately in that 3 months we did well. We got to the playoffs, got to the final of it, and I see this. It didn't happen. We didn't get promotion, but for me, I think it was a safe way, really, because it gave me an opportunity to come again and do what I thought was needed to get more consistency into the team, so that we could have a campaign and get promotion. And I did that in the summer, just a few players in and out, and we did get promotion. So that was good for me, and that was starting my career as a coach come management.
And then in terms of that, we started out with chatting about being in Edinburgh. You then become a manager at Hearts, big club in Edinburgh. What was that like for you coming back? Were you schooled effectively to then coming back and managing in the capital city?
Well, I knew, obviously, as a kid, I knew the big clubs in Scotland. Hearts is a big club. There were some disadvantages because coming back, I didn't know the scene, so to speak. If you would ask me regarding English football and reserves and reserve players, and you say such and such at Arsenal or such and such at QPR, I would know those reserve players. Not just the first team. I knew the reserves, and I would do the training sessions in the morning, and in the afternoon, have a quick lunch and off, and I'd go to reserve games.
Yeah.
and everyone, my assistant manager, he would go to one game, I go to another, chief scout, and I knew all the players, because that's the way it was then. But coming to Scotland, I didn't have that knowledge. So that was something that I had to put right, and I I was very fortunate, but I had Frank Connor, and Frank had a long career in football. He'd been at Celtic, and at that particular time he was with Wraith Rovers, and I asked him, could he come and be my assistant? So that was a big step for me, and I got the answer was yes, which was a big plus, a big boost for me. So he could fill me in things that I needed to know about, not just the players, but Scottish football. You know, what was what. I knew the teams, I knew the clubs, but there was a lot that I was a wee bit maybe not naive, but didn't have the knowledge. But Frank gave me that, and I'll be ever thankful for him for doing that. You need people round about you who are knowledgeable, and more than anything, you need someone you can trust. And I trusted Frank 100%.
So you became famous in your career for losing your teeth, and I think a lot of people think it was one in particular game that caused that. But I believe it kind of started when you were at Leeds in terms of a reserve game.
It was unfortunate. It all started. It was my first game in the reserves, away from home against Coventry City, and so that was my sort of debut, you know. So I played in the game, and I think someone like Mick Bates crossed it, and it was a diving header, and I went to try and put it in the net, and the defenders come, and he's taken me and the ball at the same time, and his boots just went straight through me, and that was it. 2 teeth, front 2 teeth, straight out, roots and all. Yeah, and that was me. Long journey home without any front teeth, and went straight to the dentist. But obviously there's nothing he can do other than try and replace them with a plate. But I had the teeth. They were no good to me.
What can you do with these?
No, can't put them back in, son. So that was it. That was the start of it. But I ended up losing in my career as it went on. I ended up losing 4 from other incidents. Maybe one of them wasn't as accidental as, but these things happen. So anyway, I lost 4. So I had a good relationship with the dentist, you know, to and fro. But that's football.
We touched basically there on the managerial aspect side of stuff as an individual coach in your own career, but you come to work with Harry Redknapp, and there's a famous incident that the press jump on as your assistant with Harry Redknapp, where you clash with Rino Gattuso. Yeah, tell us a little bit more about it. And when you were clashing with him, were you speaking in Italian?
Yeah, there was a few words came up. It was a nothing. You know, I think what had happened to him was he'd been given a decision against him, which was going to be a problem because it prevented him from playing in our home game at White Hart Lane, and he was coming off, and he had lost it a little bit, and for some reason I was a target. So it wasn't a hug, let's say, but he was emotional, and he'd lost it. And I think as you get on in life, and you've seen it, I wouldn't say done it, but you've seen it and you get experience with it, there was nothing going to happen. I mean, I'm at that moment in time, I'm a coach, and that's a different responsibility. When you're a player and you're on the field, your emotions can take you in a bad direction, and as a coach, you've got to have a certain degree. I don't know.
A bit of decorum.
Yeah, but you've got a responsibility.
Yeah.
You've got to do things right because you're an example to the dressing room. And from my point of view, nothing was going to happen, and it didn't. It didn't. But I did. I was prevented after. I think we went on and played Real Madrid, and I wasn't allowed on the bench, which I thought was wrong because I did nothing. But since that incident, I've come across Gattuso a number of times, and he is a good guy. He is a good guy. I wouldn't say all Italians are like that, but they are emotional, and he let it slip there. But I've got no gripe with him. He's a good guy. He was a good player, and we move on.
You formed a great relationship with Harry Redknapp. You kind of moved out quite a fair bit about clubs with him. What was he like to work alongside? And obviously you're talking about Gattuso in terms of how emotional he was. What was Harry like for you as a manager and that bond that you had together?
Yeah, well, it came out of the blue for a start. That he rang me one day and asked me, could we meet up? And we did meet up. I went half and half, and we went. I met him in the service station, and we had a good long chat. And he wanted me to come and join him with his staff, which was good for me because I could see what he was doing there at Portsmouth. They were, they had just got promotion and were going into the big league, and they had a good team, and the owners were backing Harry. So yeah, I took the opportunity, and we worked together. And that particular time at Portsmouth was fantastic. We won the FA Cup, but other than that, the consistency for a club of that size that we had in the league was excellent. And when it comes down to it, what I did come across was Harry was a good manager. Mm-hmm. He could handle big name players, and he wanted his teams to play football. And I think that sort of image that he gave attracted big players like Sol Campbell and people like that came. Adebayor, the player, they were good players, and they came to play with Harry because Harry wanted to play football. He wanted his team, whether it was in a training session or in a match day, he wanted them to enjoy their football. I wouldn't say he was a disciplinarian, but he didn't want players to mess about in any shape or form. He wanted to be on and off the field professional, but he wanted them to enjoy their football. That was the thing, and so that was the reasons that I thought that the dressing room was never a problem, and the clubs that he were at were successful.
So we're here with Glenmore Spirits today to pretty much celebrate their rare fine bottlings, which we've got in front of us. And there's a story behind every single bottle in terms of where the position of these Scotland bottles are. So I think it's kind of probably a good point to sort of lead in with your international career. And some brilliant stories. But talk me through the first Scotland call-up and when you get that call that you're going to play with the Scotland national team.
Yeah, it's. I think as a football player, it's something you want to achieve. It's a target, and when you're at Leeds United and you look round and everybody you're looking at is an international player, I think it gives you confidence and a belief that if you can reach that standard and that consistency, that could quite possibly happen to you, and it did happen to me. I got a call up with Tommy Docherty, and I went there and I was involved in the week leading up to the game. But I think it was just from Tommy Docherty, it was just an introduction to this is what it feels like. I didn't take any part in the game at all. Then towards the end of that season, we played in the European Cup Winners' Cup final. We played AC Milan in Salonika. And after the game, I did quite well. I was immediately drawn in. Me and Peter Lorimer, I was drawn in to be added to the squad, and that was for the game against England at Wembley, and that was my first real introduction to it, because I did strip and I did play in the game. So it's a great moment in your career, because you have, and then after that, the hard work, it starts, because you've got one cap. You don't want one cap.
And the caps were a bit different back then, because I believe now it's a cap for every game, but it was a cap for every year. Was that right in your year? It was every year that you were in that Scotland squad?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you on that. I didn't know that. I thought, well, you get an international, you get your jersey, you get your cap. You've got one. You play in home internationals. You're lucky enough. You play 3 games. You get 3 caps. No, you do with England, but you don't with Scotland. You get 1 a year. So, and the first ones I got, it being in gold, it would give you EVC, so EVS, and it would be put on it, embroidered on it. And you might have, if you've had 3 games, the 3 games, Wales versus Scotland or whatever it was, and that was that. So my caps were like that. So I ended up, I got 50 odd caps, but I only got 10 caps.
Was it 1 goal missing as well?
One went missing.
One missing as well.
One went missing, and obviously it's the tail end of my career. It was against the USSR in the '82 World Cup, and I was in Italy, and my cap never arrived. So I ended up ringing the SFA because I wanted my cap, the precious. And so I get through, secretary puts me through and says, Joe, your cap's been sent. I says, well, I ain't got it. I ain't got it. When did you send it? Well, we sent it about 3 months ago to Inter Milan. I says, listen, I play for AC Milan. Where's my cap? So I had to go, and Inter Milan had my cap. They had it in their trophy room, and I got in anyway. A couple of days later, they brought my cap over.
So there's a wind up there in that.
Yeah.
So you fast forward a wee bit in terms of the World Cup. Let's look at the year with Scotland are playing in the Euros this year. Big competitions, and as a player for you on the international scene, you were lucky to play in obviously World Cups. What was that like? I know that obviously in terms of there's a lot of stories in terms of you and Davy Hay in terms of playing together and so forth, but you're also someone that's obviously scored in these competitions. Like, as a player now, to come back and see the current crop Scotland squad obviously are doing exceptionally well. It's not been something that's been as regular on the international scene for Scotland, but it was back then.
It was then, but there was a gap before all happened, and I'm bringing that in because I was 22 when my first World Cup, but there was players there that were in their 30s, and there had been a gap. I mentioned about Bobby Collins and Dave Mackay in '58. They went and played in the World Cup, and then there was a gap. And I remember going to see Scotland games, qualification games, and they just didn't do it. And yet the players were there. They had some great players and real good teams, but it never happened. And then I was in the build up, the qualification games for Germany for '74, and I played against Czechoslovakia, and I played in a team that I looked round and I'm more or less at the start of my career, and some of them are at the end of their career, and you could tell in the build up what it meant to us all, and especially because this was their last chance. And I'm talking about players, world-class players, players that had done it exceptionally well in their career at club level, but it's an international, you know, and that's something you've got to try and achieve. And I'm talking about like so Billy Bremner, Dennis Law, Jimmy Johnson, and it went on. And you could see it, you can see it there. And we managed it. We got across the line, and it is so fine, you know, from success to failure. But we did it. We got there, and once we had achieved that in my career from then, in that 10 years of international football, you had a belief, not just a desire, a belief and a way of doing it. You got across the line because it is so tight, so fine. You know, going to the World Cups. You know, I went to 3 World Cups, and we come home because we goal difference. That's how difficult it is because of the standard of the teams that you play. But the opportunity to go to a World Cup, as I did in '74, the '74 World Cup, was not just only an eye opener to me. It was to the whole squad, because they'd never been there. It was new ground, and you learn from it. And I'm sure that's one of the reasons why, in my career, that period, we did it again and again. And Scotland got off. They had a great run.
Glimmer Spirits have done a bottling that's there, and which we've got this bottle here. The 24-year-old whisky. It celebrates the oldest rivalry in football, Scotland and England, 150 years rivalry. Preparation, you were at Plymouth. There was a game where Willie Ormond allowed you. There was a game coming up on the Saturday against England, and Willie Ormond was the manager, and it says to the national team, you can have a night out in Largs. And I believe Jimmy Johnston, you probably wouldn't get away with it in the current days, but Jimmy Johnston allowed all the boys to go for a wee swim in a boat. And it didn't quite turn out the way that he's wanted it to be.
Yeah, I think what it was, we were in home internationals and we're building up to go to, not just go to a World Cup, but we're playing England at the weekend, and he allowed them to have a wee drink and that, but some of them went out, some of the lads went out.
You weren't there, no? You were?
No, I was...
Preparation was key for you
no, then? You may believe it or not, in those days we were down at Largs, and I was in a room, but not, I was in a room with Peter Lorimer, Billy Bremner, myself, you know, we shared the room, that was it, you know. And Peter says to me, it's going to go off tonight. And I says, what? He says, they're off out. And I went to bed. Me and Peter went to bed, as some of the other players did, and some of them went out. And Peter, as soon as we got in the door, Peter put a chair to the door, and that was it, locked. Good night. And then later on in what was the morning, there's a chap on the door, and it was like, oh, and there's the fire brigade outside. We thought, the hotel's going on fire, let's get downstairs. So everybody's running about, and the fire brigade, everything was happening. And we all had to go into the lounge. And it became known to us all, were there, that there were some of the players missing. And one of them was Jimmy Johnston, and they'd found him, and they brought him in, and he had a blanket on him, and he was sat in the corner, a big chair in the corner, shivering away.
So at this point you knew it wasn't a fire?
Well, it wasn't a fire, no. And then the story came out that they had gone, some of the players had gone, and they'd gone to a pub along the shore, and on the way back, they were having a messing about, and we Jimmy got in a boat, our own boat, and started singing, and someone kicked the boat, and it went into the sea, and he disappeared, and he was holding the oars and singing away, and he dropped the oars, and we couldn't get him back. Well, we couldn't get him back. I wasn't there, but they couldn't get him back.
He was just drifting out to sea.
Drift to sea, so they to phone the emergency services, and the helicopters and the boats and all that were out, and they eventually found him out in the Irish Sea.
And what was Willie Ormond like with that? Obviously, luckily enough, he's gone and got the result against England on the Saturday. But how did he react to that? He wasn't there, was he?
How did he handle it? It was a difficult one, because it wasn't just the England game. You know, I would imagine that, I don't know, but imagining that the squad is more or less selected for the campaign in Munich. So there's not much he could do about that. So I think he tried to use it in a positive way, and try to nullify it, and you know, that's it. You've had your last chance. We've got to get into this game. We've got to prepare what we have from now until then to the kick-off, and then take it on in the couple of games that we had lined up for you know, going into the World Cup. So it was a difficult one for him, but I thought the manager handled it as well as he possibly could. And we went into the England game, and we won it 2-0. We played really, really well.
Current Scotland squad, let's bring it forward to current times in preparation and key. Scotland this year are obviously going into the Euros, and to coincide with that, Glenmore Spirits they're doing a bottling that was, it's basically been on a cast since 1999. It'll be bottled on the day that Scotland open the Euros against Germany. How big a game is that for Scotland in terms of being able to open the Euros and this build up the journey that Steve Clarke's been on with this current Scotland squad, to be able to then be the opening game in the European Championship and taking on the hosts?
Brilliant. Absolutely. To be a player and involved in that, that's a chapter in your career that pretty envious, really. You know, you would want to play in a game like that, not just because it's Germany, the hosts. You know, you're playing against the best in Europe, and I've got to say, if you're going to play, if you look at it's a tough group, but I would say playing Germany, if you've got to play them, the game to play them is in the first game.
It's 25 years since we played them in a tournament, international, and does that bring a little bit added pressure if the Scotland boys? I know most of them now, which we'll touch on in a second, are playing at a much higher level, and they've sort of stepped outside of Scotland. But does that bring a little bit more to the game, or is it just a case they think for them is just going in and focusing on being able to take part in the Euros?
Like I say, it's a game that you want to play. It's a game that you go through your career to be good enough and successful enough to be looked upon as a person that can go to a tournament like that and be selected. And that just doesn't happen. That goes through a lot of work, hard work. You got to have a little bit of luck as well, as you know, through the fact that I see, if you look at what the squads have been in the last couple of days, there's a number of injuries there. Are these players going to be fit? Who's going to come in if they're not fit, given an opportunity? And that's football. But you've got to take it. You've got to take that. But to play in a game like the opening game against the host nation, it's a landmark that in your career.
Obviously, we've spoke about you playing in Milan, playing in European competition and stuff. We've seen England players, Jude Bellingham at Real Madrid, Sancho at Dortmund, Kane at Bayern. And the England team progresses because they're playing at a higher level. We're now seeing, with our international players, you've got Ferguson at Bologna, you've got Josh Doig's out there now, he's just got his move as well. And that gives us much better preparation because these players are playing at a much higher level and they're getting to play, obviously, in Italy and obviously some of international players. John McGinn's playing at a huge level with Aston Villa in terms of down there. That stands us in better stead this time round for the Euros.
I think so. I think the manager's got to be given a pat on the back for that. You know, I think he's got to take a lot of credit for that, because he's over the period of time that he's been in there as a manager. I think he started off with a group of players that would do him justice. But now I think it's more than just the 11 at start. I think that there's a squad there. I watched them. I went to the game, for example. I went to the game in Norway, not too far back there, and that was a difficult game. And Scotland played okay, but it looked throughout the game as I'm watching it that it was Norway that was going to win the game. But they showed a lot of grit and determination and played as a team, and the strength was the team, and they ground out that result. And at the end of it, they deserved it. They got that result away against a team that got some real good players, and that, I think, will give them a lot more confidence and belief in themselves. But that's happened over a period of time, and I think, as I said, he started off with a group, but I think the group of players now, in depth, is stronger. I think he's got some players, and I'm not talking about to be on the bench. I'm talking about players that can compete for a place from the start, and I think he'll need that, because he has a number of injured players, and it's going to be an issue. Okay, they're fit again, but are they fit enough? So there'll be a lot of decisions have to be made. But I think that depth is something that Scotland didn't have when he came in as the manager. But they are now, and he's given players the opportunity to prove themselves, played them, and seen what he sees. Yeah, he's got what it takes, and I think the strength is the group, is the depth of that. It's got better, without any shadow of a doubt. I think he has got a team,
and there'll be a huge Scottish contingent, a Tartan Army, going over there,
of course,
to watch that. I know that preparing for these games, a lot of the fans will be taking their blends on. They'll want to drink their whiskies and so forth for it. That was the culture of Scotland, going to these big tournaments.
Yes.
Whether it's you and going to this now, like in terms of if your dad was obviously, if he was to have gone to it, it was definitely he'd want to be part of that. My
dad, he savoured this whiskey. He sipped it, you know, a half and a half. He loved it, but not. It was taken over a period of time, and then he'd refill his glass. But he loved it. And he enjoyed it. He loved his football, and he would be celebrating if there was a result. He would certainly have a large one. I remember when I was fortunate enough to play with Scotland, and we would go back to the hotel in Glasgow after the game, and then, you know, go your own way after that. But my family would meet me back there in the hotel. He'd finish it all off with a wee whiskey, you know, and then I'd go back down to England the following morning. And but that little meeting with the family after the game, it was great, especially if you won, you know.
You're seeing brands now like Glenmore Spirits that have brought this together today. How good is it for Scottish football that the brands are now doing something with football as a whole, giving the supporters an opportunity to enjoy that occasion? We bring in the culture of Scotch whisky into it. Yeah,
well, I think the culture's there, and it has been there for a long, long time. But what I think it can do as well is, and the supporters are good about it, is memories. You know, dates, memories. That's the way I look at it. You know, it takes you back. It takes you back to when you were a little bit younger, or as you say, opportunities like the Scottish players have to market with a game against Germany, and maybe a victory against Germany, and that's something that you would remember for a long, long time.
Right, well, thank you very much for spending the morning with us. I guess it's time was just in traditional Scottish way to cheers Scotland's chances at the Euros. So,
all the best.
Slàinte.
Slàinte, man.